Welcome to the ANEW Insight Podcast, empowering and inspiring your journey to optimal health. Hosted by Dr. Supatra Tovar, clinical psychologist, registered dietitian, fitness expert, and author of Deprogram Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. I follow my guests' journey to optimal health, providing you with the keys to unlock your own wellness path. Tune in and evolve with us. Hi, I am so excited to have registered dietitian nutritionist and certified diabetes care and education specialist, seasoned media contributor, and author Vandana Sheth with us today. Vandana, welcome.
Thank you, Supatra. So excited to be here.
Me too. I cannot wait to pick your brain, especially on all things diabetes, weight management, kind of debunking certain diet myths, things like that. I just cannot wait to pick your brain. Before that, I'm going to read a little bit about Vandana and then we're going to get into our questions. Vandana Sheth is a Los Angeles-based registered dietitian nutritionist and certified diabetes care and education specialist with nearly 3 decades of experience. She specializes in vegetarian and intuitive eating, family nutrition, and culturally sensitive diabetes management. Vandana passionately integrates her Indian heritage into her practice, empowering clients with dietary strategies rooted in traditional foods to help manage blood sugar, support weight goals, and promote lifelong wellness. She is a seasoned media contributor and is the author of My Indian Table, Quick and Tasty Vegetarian Recipes. Vandana, welcome.
Thank you again, Supatra, for that warm introduction and welcome to your community.
Yay.
I'm so excited to chat with you all things food, nutrition, and just, savoring food, really.
Exactly. These are all my favorite things. So I love to delve into people's inspiration, what brought them into their field, what was the kind of the defining moment, and then what led you to, really focus on diabetes and weight management.
Thank you. So, growing up in India, I was born and raised in India. My childhood home was one where food was something that was joyous. Food was what connected us. To each other, to our tradition, to love. It was a love language. And so I became fascinated with nutrition because I saw how powerful food can be in terms of healing as well as shaping our overall health. And so, as someone who grew up in a beautiful country with so many amazing, delicious foods, traditional Indian food is delicious, made from scratch.
Mhm.
I understand how meaningful food can be, not just for our health, but for our identity and joy. And
Mm.
that's really what drew me into this field.
Oh, I love it. I mean, I can relate, although my mom is Thai, my dad is American. I grew up with that same just passion and love for food, for cooking, for how food makes me feel in my
Mhm.
body, especially, when it is homemade and, just full of amazing ingredients. And oh my goodness, Indian food is one of my favorites. So it's so lovely that I can pick your brain about Indian food as well. Well, then what led you to really focusing on diabetes and weight management?
Yeah, so it almost was a natural progression. I saw a lot of family members dealing with diabetes. Diabetes is a huge concern for people of the South Asian community. India, unfortunately, now is the diabetes capital of the world. So it's a staggering statistic. And so seeing how people were sort of eating healthy, being vegetarian, but having this huge risk for diabetes. It almost didn't make sense. And so that was one of my driving forces and desire to help people in the community. And heart disease is another huge risk factor with the South Asian community. So those were the two specific conditions that drew me in. It's overall metabolic health. And more research is showing that really food can play a huge role in how we can prevent certain conditions as well as manage them without necessarily going on medications or cutting back on medications. So
Oh,
that was really my driving
Yes.
desire.
The absolute hope for, I think, everyone is that they don't want to be on a medication for life. And I think they're often told that by their doctors. And you see these with the new weight management drugs as well. You need to be on this for life. But we do know, and there's plenty of scientific research to point that you can reverse most of these kind of age related, I like to say diet related
Yeah.
diseases through nutrition. Can you give me a picture of what is it in Indian cuisine itself that's contributing to diabetes, especially, when you are more of a vegetarian community and vegetarians, kind of more on the whole, don't
Yes.
tend to develop diabetes.
That's a great question. So, first of all, when we think about vegetarian diets, they can be amazing. They can have lots of carbohydrates, lots of fruits and vegetables, can have beans and lentils. So, it's all about how balanced is your diet.
Hmm.
Often they can be very carb heavy, and
Hmm.
especially when you think of the westernization of society that transfers around the world. I'm sure you travel and you've seen cuisine has changed when we travel around the world from the traditional way of eating to more highly refined processed grains instead of the whole grain millets and things like that. It's
Hmm.
also convenience food, so more added salt, added sugar into food products,
Hmm.
less fiber,
Hmm.
um, food on the go. So it's just lifestyle factors that have changed. Stress has gone up significantly. Many Indian families used to have multiple generations live close together. Now it's not the case. So you don't have that support as well. So those are all, environmental lifestyle factors, but also genetically, there's a predisposition we are now understanding that the way the Indian body processes food, there are different theories as to why that might be the case. But Indian clients or Indian American clients often tend to have a higher risk of insulin resistance at a lower body size. They might look healthy on the outside, but when we look at their panel, they might be at higher risk for insulin resistance at an earlier stage, at a lower BMI. So some of the guidelines are changing. There's a lot of research being done. There are some huge studies being done with Indian Americans that are definitely pulling some of this data together.
Yes, and I've heard too, there's several studies that point to what is the actual cause of insulin resistance. And what they're starting to see, and many doctors are not aware, and even some dietitians are not aware, that saturated fat or fat in general, whether it's ingested or it's, internal, is a big part of why insulin is not able to be delivered to cells. So I would assume maybe in Indian cuisine, the use of ghee, things like that, might also be contributing because when we have excess fat, especially saturated fat, in our diet, our liver can only process so much, and then the rest goes out into the bloodstream. And also, we develop most often visceral fat, and when we have that, what they've been showing is that the fat itself kind of leaks out of the bloodstream and towards the muscle cells where the insulin receptors are, and they start to gum up the insulin receptors. So then glucose can't be delivered to the cells. So when we're seeing that, we're, you know, I think a lot of doctors are telling their clients stop eating carbs,
Right.
eat more protein, and
And
they're
fat,
and
right?
fat, which I'm
Right.
like, oh my goodness.
Yes. So that's sort of like, when we talked about the genotype, the physical body shape or composition of an Indian American or South Asian client, what I've noticed is often they have something called like the skinny fat, where visually they're looking healthy. Whereas, like, when you look at someone, they look healthy, but they're actually carrying more of the dangerous fat inside their body at a smaller size.
Mm.
And so that's why it's really important for anyone in the South Asian community, if you have a strong family history, to actually get tested earlier, get some of those baseline numbers so that we
Mhm.
know where we need to make a difference. And you're absolutely right. Fat can play a huge role, both digesting it, like, how our body processes fat from food, as well as what we are genetically carrying and where we are carrying that. That can
Yes.
affect our insulin.
So let's talk about some of the misinformation or the not so great dietary advice that we're seeing, especially for diabetes, because I think this is so important. People tend to hear from their doctors, up your protein, you can eat as much fat as you want, cut out all carbs, right? And then you see people really
Yes.
struggling on these diets, especially having low energy, having way too much fat in their diet, gaining weight, having to stay on these medications. So let's clear the air. What would be your recommendations, whatever culture we're in? And we definitely want to be culturally sensitive and, not whitewash people's dietary preferences. What is your go-to advice when somebody is diagnosed with prediabetes or diabetes?
Well, first of all, keeping it simple, right? It's so important to really go down to the basics. And it's not sexy. It's the same advice I would give anyone, whether you have blood sugar concerns or not. It's really focusing on the science, focusing on the quality of food you're eating, your portions, and pairing foods. So when it comes to anyone with prediabetes or diabetes, the plate can be a simple visual. Fill half your plate with colorful vegetables. Let's get lots of fiber in there. And we all tend to get stuck in a, sort of rut where we eat the same vegetables every week, but let's vary it up. Let's get different colors on your plate, and you can do a combination of cooked and raw. And the spices, herbs, whatever you like to add, enjoy it. Fill half to three-fourths of the rest of the plate with your protein, and let's try to mix up your protein. Let's get protein that's more plant-based. So beans and lentils, tofu, tempeh, there are so many great options. If you do animal protein, that's fine. Let's keep it lean. And then let's get some whole grain carbohydrates. It can be breads, tortillas, millets, it can be quinoa, your choice. And that right there is a perfectly balanced plate, one that gives you lots of macro and micronutrients in the right amounts. So you feel satisfied, you've not given up any flavors, textures, and at the same time, it's going to be more blood sugar friendly.
Absolutely. And I would say, you know, people when they think about vegetarian nutrition, I'm putting that in quotes because there's so much
Yes.
variation between vegetarian or vegan nutrition, and some are not nutritious at all. Um, Talk about, I hear so many people like, where am I going to get my protein if I can't get it from animal sources? And people don't really understand plant sources of protein, or they think that they're inferior. They think that they're
Mm,
not going to get enough protein when we know people are getting an overabundance of protein. There's no real need to kind of, you know, up protein like we're seeing out there. Give people a little picture about plant proteins and how they may even be a little bit more beneficial for the
yes.
body than animal sources of protein.
Yes, one of my favorite questions. As soon as someone knows at a party that you're vegetarian or plant based, like, oh my gosh, where are you going to get the protein?
Yep.
So it's not that difficult. All plants have amino acids that give us protein in different levels. So when we think of higher protein sources with plant based foods, soy, so tofu, tempeh, soy milk can be great options. Just one when you look at the block of tofu that you buy, that can have about 5 servings, and each serving can have 8 to 14 grams of protein. So
Mhm.
that's a huge, like, so one block can have anywhere from 60 or more grams of protein. And
Yes.
that's so easy to prepare.
Yes, and it does have the complete amino acid
It
profile.
does. It
Mhm.
does. And you can scramble it. You can, add it to stir fry. You can add it to your smoothies. I add Indian spices and sauces. So
Mhm.
many ways to enjoy tofu, right?
Mhm.
It's a blank canvas.
Yes.
When it comes to edamame, that's another great source. You can enjoy it fresh off the pods with some spicy mix of herbs and garlic. It's so good. Or
Mhm.
you can have dry roasted edamame. Just a third of a cup can give you 14 grams protein, which is more than 2 eggs worth
Mhm.
of protein. People don't think about that. And the benefit of plant based protein is, first of all, it comes with zero cholesterol. Most likely it's low fat or lean, depends on the exact protein source. And you're getting fiber, which is so important. because fiber
Mhm.
can bind with cholesterol, help you feel full. It can also help with blood sugar management. So that's just one example. Think about lentils and beans, another favorite of mine. Any beans or lentils, like half a cup cooked, is going to give you about 7 grams protein. It's going to give you about 5 to 7 grams fiber. And of course, yes, it has carbohydrates, but it's got that fiber. So it blunts that spike in blood sugar.
Absolutely. And to note too, the fiber that you see from a lot of these, beans and legumes and other kinds of whole grains too, provide butyrate, which is really helpful for our mental health and our mood.
Yes.
You get that, you get the vitamins, you get the minerals, you're kind of getting the complete package. Let's also talk about okay, I see this a lot. I am a part of a bunch of different kinds of Facebook groups, and I'm
Mm.
really interested in how people are managing their nutrition on these medications. And I see a lot of just blanket advice. You need to get 100 grams of protein every day. You must get and I know you can become protein deficient, but I'm like, oh, it seems a little high, especially if you're not. I mean, and many of these people do not have energy. I think probably because they're not ingesting enough carbohydrate
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
give them energy. So let's help people out there, especially if you are on one of these medications. How much protein do you actually need? And what can we do to help people and support people who are on these medications who are experiencing a wide variety of, symptoms, especially low energy, poor mood, um, hair falling out, all of these kinds of things?
Yeah, I am seeing definitely a lot more clients who are on medications that can help with their weight management, with their diabetes, with their blood sugar. But one of the side effects is it significantly reduces your appetite. And so when your appetite is lower, we need to make sure that every bite of food that goes into your body is actually nutrient dense, meaning it gives you more bang for your buck. It gives you more protein, more fiber, more satisfaction. Also, if you overeat, it can have GI side effects. So you might feel nauseous and uncomfortable. So it's this fine balance and it has to be nuanced. Each client has to be looked at individually. But
Mhm.
I love when a client comes to me with a medication that they're on so that we can pair that medication with the education that's customized for them.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, yes, I do recommend more protein for my clients who are on these medications because that is important. I do see a lot of muscle loss weakness in my clients. And so that's why I do emphasize protein. As far as how much goes into your diet, again, it depends on you as an individual. But I would say if you can average it out to about 20 grams, 20 to 30 grams per meal, if you can get even 20 grams per meal 3 times a day, that right there is close to 60 grams. And we know the guidelines are where an average woman needs about 42 to 46 grams of protein a day. I
Mhm.
do think that's lower than most of us need. I do think we need more than that. But
Mhm.
if you can get close to that 20 grams 3 times a day, you're close to that 60 grams. That's better than not getting it.
Absolutely, and I think people aren't counting the protein that they're getting from plants, so they think that
So
they're not
many
getting,
sources.
but they might be getting more than enough. And I think the blanket 100 grams, I'm not sure where that came from, but generally the guidelines are zero point 0.8 grams per kilogram of body
Yes,
weight. And if you need a little bit more, maybe 1 gram per kilogram. If you're elderly or if you're like a high performance athlete, 1.2 grams
correct.
per
That's
kilogram.
that's really it.
So,
Yes.
when people are normally supposed to, and maybe it's the low end, getting 50 to 60 grams, getting 100 grams, especially if it's coming from more animal sources. What are some of the dangers of overconsumption of protein? Because people are not talking about that and think that protein's kind of this free food
Mm.
that they can eat as much of without any kind of consequence. What happens when people eat too much protein?
So, first of all, if you're eating an abundance of protein, depends on which source, right? Plant based protein is still going to give you the fiber and the carbs. And fiber, one of the positives is that fiber that comes from plant based foods is actually great food for your gut bacteria. So, it can actually do good things for your gut health as well. So I'm not as concerned when it comes from whole foods, from plant based foods. But when we're talking about animal protein, it can be higher in fat, higher in cholesterol. Um, that can be, it can have an effect, not just in terms of your overall calories. You might not realize you're actually getting more calories than you need. Any excess calorie is going to eventually affect your weight. So keep that in mind. Second is if you're over consuming protein, especially animal protein, you're cutting back on some of the key nutrients we need from vegetables and fruits and whole grains. So you're missing out on some of those nutrients. And third is potentially there's a chance and risk for your kidneys if your kidney is starting to feel overstrained. If you're healthy, most likely your body is going to be able to process it, but still, it's nice to get a balanced way of eating so
Mm.
that your body gets excited with all these just different nutrients that your body needs to break down, especially when it comes from whole foods.
Yes, I think that that's the biggest misconception is that anything you consume in excess is going to end up eventually in some weight gain and some strain on the kidneys and
Mhm.
possibly even difficulties with kidney stones, things like that, possible gout. We have a lot of,
Uh-huh.
I mean, if you just look at the standard American diet, period, there are so many reasons why the composition of the plate leads people down the line to getting these metabolic diseases. And a big part of that is, if you look at the standard American plate, half, if not more, is usually your main or your animal protein. And this is where we're seeing a lot of problems. And if you look at different cultures that don't have that emphasis or are more plant forward, you see fewer incidences of disease. I
Mm.
really think it's so important for people to go back and look at some research. I love looking at what Dr. Michael Greger puts out
Mhm.
there. I love this China study by T. Colin Campbell, work done by Dean Ornish, who I just saw in Los Angeles at the American Psychiatric.
Amazing.
I got to meet him. He's the greatest. Oh, I was like fangirling like crazy. Hopefully, he's going to be on my podcast. I asked him, he said yes. Oh
Oh
my
my gosh.
goodness.
That's huge.
Yeah,
That's huge.
he is like, I mean, he is really at the forefront of nutritional science and how diet can reverse, he's proven that you can reverse heart disease
It's
with
incredible. Yes.
plant-based nutrition. You can reverse diabetes with it as well, which I think is just absolutely amazing. So I just want to get the word out. Okay, so let's pivot a little. I have more. When you're working with somebody with type 2 diabetes, um, or that they have been diagnosed with pre-diabetes, what are the first very small, meaningful changes that they can make in their eating habits?
Yeah, it comes down to two or three very easy steps. The first one is trying to balance their plate with that visual that we talked about. Let's get at least half your plate filled with vegetables, non starchy vegetables.
Mhm.
When we can, the more colorful, the better, right? That's one easy step. They can remember that. The second is let's make sure we're going for a walk after we eat. It doesn't have to be a mile, it can be even 5 to 10 minutes. Just moving your body right after you eat can be a great way for your body, for your muscles to absorb that food that's converting to sugar and help your insulin be more sensitive. So,
Mhm.
those are two simple steps. The third one, if possible, is looking at their stress level because we know stress can really spike your blood sugar. So, if they're highly stressed in their lifestyle, that's one thing that I usually recommend some kind of breathing technique, visualization, meditation, unwinding routine every day. And those three things are at least hitting the starting points of them improving their health.
I love it. I love it. And I think, people do underestimate the effects of stress. We are not designed or meant to be in this chronic state
Mm.
of, fight or flight. And when we do, we have elevated cortisol levels, and those can wreak havoc in our joints, in our muscles, in our heart, in our brain functioning. And when that is continued over time, that's when you also see a lot more propensity towards disease. So I talk about this all the time, and this is a big reason why I went on to study clinical psychology, is that a lot of people have thought in the past that mental health and physical health are separate, and they
Mm.
are absolutely 100% not. How we think, what we do, how we handle stress directly affects our health. So I'm so glad that you mentioned this. So we have about one more question that I can squeeze into this half. When you work with somebody who has type 2 diabetes, but is also trying to lose weight, how do you balance blood sugar control with sustainable weight goals?
Actually, they're the same. They're not that different. Um, when you think about it, if again, it's not necessarily connected all the time because I do have clients who think if their physician tells them, okay, just lose some weight so your A1C improves. It's not always the case. Weight loss is not the only way to measure progress. We can measure progress many other ways. And so, but if someone needs to have both those as their goals long term for health outcomes, we again go back to the basics. Let's look at your plate. Let's make sure you're getting lots of vegetables because that's going to give you the nutrition. It's going to give you volume so you feel satisfied. It's going to give you texture and flavors. And then let's look at the portions of the carbohydrate and your protein. Let's make sure the protein is lean. It's also giving you more fiber. So, and then watch the fat. Make sure, let's put some healthy fat in there. If you're using fat, let's make sure it's either avocados, nuts, seeds, or if you're using an oil, let's make it a neutral oil that's either extra virgin olive oil or avocado oil, something that's good for you, just a touch of it.
Absolutely. Um, so, what are some examples of some traditional foods that people often overlook but actually can help stabilize blood sugar and support their health?
So when it comes to food, food is part of our culture. Food is comfort. Food is tradition. We all have these foods that we connect with special memories. And if you have a chronic condition like diabetes or pre-diabetes, it almost feels like you can't have those foods anymore. And it's really sad when I see clients who come to me and say, "Oh, I know I can't have that anymore." And that's absolutely not true. There are so many traditional Indian foods that can be both delicious and good for your management of blood sugar. So, for example, lentils and beans are a big part of Indian culture. The spices we use, turmeric, coriander, cumin, the garam masala, many of these warming spices have been looked at through research as positive for blood sugar management. Traditional vegetables like bitter melon, fenugreek leaves, these again have been looked at, and more data is showing that they can help with blood sugar management. Vegetables like okra are very common in Indian cooking. Eggplant, another vegetable that's very common. And both of these have a lot of that soluble fiber that can help with feeling satisfied, improving your lipid panel, your cholesterol, as well as blood sugar. So,
Mhm.
easy ways to incorporate your traditional foods that can also be good for you.
Yes, and I think, there's that whole, well, don't let, I don't want to take out my tortilla. I don't want to take out my white rice. I think you can have that balance, but understanding that the role that more fibrous whole grains play can also really augment. So you might be used to having, I mean, for me, it's really hard. Thai curry, it's meant to have like white jasmine rice.
It has to be
I mean,
white jasmine rice,
I'm
yes.
sorry, mom, you can't give me brown rice with my curry. But if you are incorporating so
Mhm.
many vegetables that which curries tend to have, you can help balance that out, and you don't have
That's
to,
it.
you know, say no to all of your favorite cultural foods, even if you have, something as serious as diabetes. You just want to make sure that the balance is correct. Vandana, you are so amazing. You are such a wealth of information. We're out of time for this half of this podcast, but we're going to come right back and I'm going to pick your brain some more. So hang on there, okay?
Sounds great. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Please tune in next time for the second half. You've got to hear it of this wonderful interview with registered dietitian nutritionist, certified diabetes care and education specialist, seasoned media contributor, and author Vandana Sheth. Thanks for tuning into the ANEW Insight Podcast. Please remember, the contents shared on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. You can find us anywhere podcasts are streaming, on YouTube at my.anew.insight and at anew-insight.com under the ANEW Insight Podcast tab. And follow us on our socials at my.anew.insight on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more updates. Tune in next time and evolve with us.